This program has been produced from photographic material made available to us by the THG branch of the Knights Templar, the oldest order of chivalry. We are grateful to the order for trusting us with some of the most closely guarded secrets of all time. Millions of people have seen unidentified flying objects, UFOs or flying saucers. Many of these strange objects have been seen to be operated by human-like creatures. It is far too frightening for most of us to consider what these objects may be, where they come from and who's sending them. But in this program we will examine the evidence in the form of photos, diagrams and plans which link the enormous number of sightings during and after World War II with research, construction and test flight of a great number of electromagnetically driven craft. Some of these graphics are artists' impressions, but nearly all of what follows has been given to us as genuine material, which has been successfully kept secret for half a century. These photographs were taken by an eyewitness who describes a saucer-shaped craft flying a little faster than a jet airplane, flying very low, emitting a faint singing noise. These photos were taken as it flew above him. The sighting was in Germany.
Just in time I take photos as it flies above me. It has 3 round technical devices underneath, and in the middle a deep blue point with the white emblem of the German Nazi Party. The UFO is quite large. It is light blue in color, and it frightens me. It looks very strange, and it flies very quietly away from me. Behind a wall, another UFO is parked in the dark, but I can see all the different parts quite clearly. Again, there are 3 technical devices underneath, and there are also some sort of wheels which were put underneath to make it movable. It looks like a big axle with big wheels. A truck is there, and a crane in the background. There are only 2 people visible, one underneath the spaceship and the other one on the roof, where there is a small cockpit. Everything is very quiet. There is a cross painted on the spaceship that looks similar to the German Nazi flag. There are no glass windows visible, but there are 2 round openings with something above them. Underneath the UFO there are strange looking plates which look like rotors of a turbine engine, but they are probably something different. There are protruding parts underneath that look like guns. They could not possibly be antennas because they are too thick. The ship has a diameter of 18 to 20 meters. It looks really dangerous. Next to the truck there's another car parked. It's a VW. Everyone laughed when I told them the story of what I saw. They say I was drunk. I might have been drunk too much beer, but I'm convinced I saw a UFO.
In the week following this UFO report, there were other reports also from Bavaria. For example, a petrol Bowser attendant who said he'd seen a UFO, but people accused him of being drunk and made fun of him. So to avoid further ridicule, he said he was just making a joke. UFO reports are difficult to believe. It's up to each person to form their own opinion and to consider the implications for themselves. On the 14th of December 1944, the New York Times published the first of the UFO news stories. Floating mystery ball is new Nazi air weapon. It was disclosed on December the 13th by the Supreme Headquarters of the Allied Expeditionary Force that a new German weapon made its appearance on the Western Air Front. American airmen report that they are encountering silver-coloured spheres in the air above German territory. The spheres are being encountered singly and in clusters. Sometimes they are semi-translucent. This report is suggestive of electromagnetically driven craft. These objects frequently appeared where German troops were concentrated in Northern Europe. Many ghost rockets were sighted, especially in Scandinavia and Norway. On the screen now is a drawing from the SS files dated 7th of November 1943. The existence of UFOs, which almost all serious researchers now regard as a fact, give us a clue about a whole new technology. The enormous sparks we call lightning give us a glimpse at the immense energy freely available to power these machines. The life energy inside every human being is another aspect of this same magical power. These things are spoken of in the German Thule Society and through one of its members in the SS. These concepts were quite different to those of the German military at the time. This was the beginnings of the first so-called Green Party, and perhaps ironically a search for a new harmony between man and nature. In the German Thule Society, the secret sign was the black sun. This same sign was evident in ancient Babylon and to the Carthaginians and the Phoenicians. In these ancient times, the sign of the black sun was symbolized by a cross. The cross recurs throughout history as a symbol of power. This symbol can be seen in the swastika of the Third Reich. The cross is seen on this Messerschmitt. The Knight's Cross is a variation of this symbol, which is thousands of years old. We do not know where the Germans of the Third Reich got their ideas. This drawing of ancient Babylon displays the concept of an invincible power from the heavens. Victor Scharberger was one of the leading scientists in a very intense push for a new and clean energy. Simplified, it could be called implosion instead of explosion. There was a group within the Third Reich who were searching for constructive solutions, not destructive ones. In these diagrams you can see a new type of vehicle was being planned. The normal combustion engines using fossil fuels in our cars are dependent on the explosion principle and hence tend to be destructive to the environment. Victor Scharberger's experimental vehicles were based on esoteric principles and focused his research on electrogravitation. In other words, regarding gravity as an electrical force which can be utilized for propulsion. The U-13 department of the SS concentrated their efforts on this technique. This was the means by which the Hanibu flying saucer was powered. Here you can see the construction plans of the Hanibu 2. The computer graphic enhancement shows something of the look of these Hanibu flying saucers. The engine is very likely to have been designed by Captain Hans Kohler and built by the German AEG company in 1944. The engine being called the Kohler converter. This engine was designed so that it needed a relatively small amount of energy to activate it, this energy coming from an accumulator or battery. After a short time, the Kohler converter built up sufficient energy transformed from the gravitational field of the Earth This is a diagram of the Kohler converter, and this is a photograph of the actual converter, operating on a principle of genius simplicity. This is a preliminary sketch of the Hanibu 2. The cockpit here is outlined in red. With a circular driving unit beneath, outlined in purple. With adjacent space for people or soldiers. This machine was built somewhat like a modern ship, designed to be self-sufficient for long periods of time, with sleeping space and working area. Looking a bit like the brim of a hat, the saucer part of this machine is the means by which it is steered. This being achieved by emitting an electrically generated force in the chosen direction. There were a number of other spherical and saucer-shaped prototypes also built at this time, but using conventional rocket power. Under the code V7, a number of military prototypes were developed. These were concurrent with the V1 and V2 rocket developments. The Schriever Habimol flying machine was a jet-propelled vertical takeoff and landing craft developed in 1942. The first 3 prototypes were badly damaged when tested, and the project was abandoned. Dr. Richard Miethe, in cooperation with the Italian researcher Dr. Giuseppe Belluzzo, also worked on a flying machine which was round in shape, and developed a new V7 prototype. Here are 2 photographs of the V7, Hitler's new wonder weapon. On the 7th of April 1944, Miethe showed construction plans to Hitler and demonstrated the vehicle in flight. In this photograph, Hitler is standing next to a model of the new prototype. This V7 saucer was built with 12 BMW engines of the type 028. The V7 rose to 20,000 metres on the first test and 24,000 metres on the second test. Helium was the fuel used in this machine. Here is a plan of the V7. After this, a new smaller type called Vrill was developed. Here you can see a sketch of the Vrill, and here's a photograph of the test flight. Work on these unconventional flying machines was a race with time, since conventional rockets were also being developed, and it was a matter of competing for resources, materials and manpower to build them. These are some of the rockets being developed at this time. Every nation involved in the Second World War were developing new weapons, but the real wonder weapons were not associated with fire and noise, but were being developed and propelled quietly and secretly. An intermediate step was Project Fireball. The Allied forces called them Foo Fighters. The fireballs were developed in Vienna Neustadt, a small town near Vienna, under the technical group of the SS. Here is a photograph of the fireballs in flight. These were radio controlled with no people on board. They were also called flying turtles, and due to certain new fuel combinations, they emitted a strong light. Developed to disrupt the ignition systems of enemy aircraft. This fits in with numerous reports of power failures associated with UFO sightings, including the New York blackout of the 60s. Next we have a drawing indicating the relationship between the Earth's magnetic force, seen here with the North and South Pole, and the electromagnetic field around the flying saucer. This is a list of 261 flying saucers, including 3 Honeyboo models and 84 Vrills. These were built towards the end of World War II. As well as this, there were some Miethe 7. The Honeyboo had a diameter of 25 meters. The development and construction of these flying machines created the most top-secret documents and the most top-secret projects of the Second World War. The engine of the Honeyboo was the Kohler tachionata electrogravitation motor in combination with a Fundegraf belt generator. Most of the photographs are of the Honeyboo 2. Here we see the rooms inside the Honeyboo. From these drawings we can imagine what it would have looked like inside a German flying saucer. The red markers here are indicating guns on this saucer. These are photographs of the Honeyboo 2, probably taken during a test flight. We can see a gun on the bottom of this Honeyboo, and what may be a symbol of the Third Reich. What a terrifying impact this must have made on people seeing the craft at a low altitude. This is a tank gun on the bottom of a Hanibu. Here again are construction plans from the Hanibu series, indicating that this mystery was once a reality. This gives weight to the suggestion that international oil companies, who control the majority of world commerce, may have something to gain by the continuing suppression of the technology which keeps these massive machines silently in the air. One explanation for the emission of light commonly associated with the night sightings of UFOs is that one method of propulsion is an intense cathode ray emission, creating a vacuum into which the craft moves. This form of propulsion is compatible with the misty impressions of this photograph. The gun is clearly visible under this craft. These photographs show the Hanibu 2 experimental craft fitted underneath with tank guns developed for the Sherman Panzer or Panther tanks. Although originally these craft were designed to carry electronic guns, they were later fitted with 7.5cm tank cannons. The weight of the cannon would not have been a problem on the Hanibu craft, which weighed almost 100 tons anyway, because the tachyon and electrogravitation engine generated its own gravitational field. Plans have been discovered for much larger craft. This Hanibu 4 had several guns. There is also evidence of small, highly manoeuvrable craft. There were 17 Vrill of 11.5 metres with a speed of 2,900 kilometres per hour with remote control gun. On this Vrill 9 plan we can see the cockpit of this one-man craft. These are low-altitude test flight photos. On this enlargement we can see the pilot in the cockpit. UFO information is also available from the Huygens Society. Next, our translator comments on some newspaper clippings.
Here's an interesting press release. The first UFO flies in Prague. Flying saucers invented in Germany. Reconstructed flying saucers. The questions if planet Earth is under the control of the UFOs is an interesting one. Is there a danger from an invasion from space? Above the river Elbe there was seen a mysterious flying saucer. There was a hunt for UFOs in Canada too. The American President Jimmy Carter has seen a UFO too. All over the world there has been sightings of UFOs and mysterious flying objects. Mysterious UFO turns alarm at the NATO. Secret UFOs above Hessen. The interests of UFOs is Soviets' aim too. Edwin Aldrin, the second man on the moon, saw 7 UFOs and he was not allowed to talk about it. UFOs at night above Hamburg. 2 policemen saw it too. 100 Germans saw a blue UFO. The watch stopped. UFO above Soviet Union. Nuremberg. Pilot hunts UFO. US secret documents prove UFOs caused atom weapons to be useless. Space pieces, a newspaper headline. The mystery of UFOs are solved. UFOs do not come from outer space, but are Nazis who want to create a new Reich. Governments of the world are informed but afraid. If there is a serious economic crisis, they are afraid the Nazis will come with their flying saucers.
It is not only flying saucers that have been seen, but also flying cigars. Huge spaceships shaped like a cigar. These could be the motherships. The idea of a mothership was developed in Germany in 1944, or possibly earlier. This project was called Andromeda. They were 109 meters long, powered by 4 Thule engines. They were designed to carry 1 Hanibu and a few Vrill. This is an example of a construction plan, very rarely seen. This photograph of the mothership with UFOs emerging is from George Adamski. George Adamski also saw a Hanibu-type spacecraft. He claimed they came from Venus. For comparison, here is a computer-generated replica of the Hanibu 2. This is a CIA paper from 1952 requiring all UFOs to be reported to the military. The CIA recommend to security advisors what information may go to the press in order to avoid panic. Almost all photographs from then on have been censored. About that time, a movie called Earth vs. Flying Saucers was released, but very soon disappeared. This had extraordinary special effects and has only recently turned up in local video stores. This German news clip is a report that an American farmer who witnessed the landing of a flying saucer claimed that the occupants spoke German. The farmer was arrested. The strange markings on this spacecraft show drawings similar to the swastika. Adamski had a friend who also saw flying saucers landing. He was a relative of Winston Churchill. His name was Desmond Leslie. Adamski and Leslie were not arrested. From then on, saucers looking like a Hane-Butu were thought to come from Venus. The origin of the many types of UFOs seen in almost every country on the planet remains a question. It is interesting to note the very great interest shown by the German military before and during the war in the Antarctic continent at the South Pole. In 1938, as Germany was strongly preparing for war, Captain Richter led an Antarctic expedition. He was sent there by Hermann Goering. This top-secret expedition was directed to ice-free parts of the Antarctic. The German part of Antarctica was called Neuschwabenland. These positions are where German flags were erected. This is a document of gratitude signed by Hermann Goering. At the height of the Second World War, Admiral Dönitz, the submarine warfare expert, made a very secret mission to move the so-called Last Battalion. This is a list of nearly 100 U-boats which remain unaccounted for. From the serial numbers in the left-hand column we can see that this is not a random list but a complete series of U-boats which have disappeared. There is evidence of a number of secret bases in the Antarctic. This is a statue of Marduk. More of him later. Admiral Karl Dönitz and a president of the Third Reich signed the surrender documents which ended World War II in May 1945. But they never surrendered the Third Reich itself. So officially Germany never surrendered. And this raises the possibility that there may still be German forces in the Antarctic. At the beginning of the war in 1939, Hitler said that if Germany was overrun, the fight would continue from outside. Perhaps we need not place any special significance to this remark. During 1952 in Washington there was panic. You can see from these photographs of a radar screen UFOs flying in formation. They went straight over the White House. A number of radar surveillance centres had the same alarming images on their screens. This was July 1952. Some years prior to that, in 1946 and 1947, Admiral Byrd undertook a US Navy invasion of Antarctica disguised as a scientific expedition. It had the code name High Jump. After preparations in the previous year, Operation High Jump started on the 30th of February 1947. And yet on the 4th of March, after the disappearance of several aircraft, the expedition was cancelled. Although the details have never been published, Admiral Byrd said that objects were able to fly from one pole to the other, and it was necessary to defend ourselves against flying machines from the Antarctic. This is a sketch from the German magazine Spiegel indicating the flying patterns of UFOs. A New Zealand airline pilot, Bruce Cathy, observed similar patterns over New Zealand. In 1958, the Americans sent a major expedition to the Antarctic, during which on the 27th of August, the 30th of August and the 9th of September, there is evidence that nuclear missiles were fired at Neusvardenland, the German territory. This could be linked to the holes in the ozone layer in the Antarctic today. There are parts of a report of a kamikaze operation being a joint German-Japanese expedition in Ahanibu 3 to the planet Mars. Ahanibu 3, with a diameter of 71 metres, is claimed to have enough power to travel the 75 million kilometres the distance from Earth to Mars. There is a 1945 report that the SS Department D4 decided to make this journey. This would have been a one-way trip, unless they received help along the way or at the other end of the journey. In this latter part of the war, the level of desperation was sufficient to try anything that could change the fate of Germany. Ahanibu 3 was supposed to reach Mars in 8.5 months, in January 1946. Ahanibu 3 was the only craft which had the speed to reach Mars, and yet if it did arrive, there's no evidence of a friendly welcome. These photographs of the surface of Mars show the bleak landscape that would have greeted these space travellers. Many researchers, seeing this huge carved face on Mars, wonder if it might have been carved long ago as a deliberately grim reminder left by a civilization destroying itself with war and greed, or nuclear holocaust, perhaps millions of years ago. There was an old Egyptian legend of the god Marduk being sad about his home country, Mars. There are photographs of pyramids on Mars and of a ruined city the size of Los Angeles, complete with an underground grid system still emitting infrared or heat radiation. We can only speculate on these things, but it is remarkable that with satellites able to read a newspaper on Earth from various vantage points orbiting around the planet, and with almost every astronaut coming back with stories of seeing flying saucers in space or being greeted by 100 spacecraft on what is supposed to be the first landing on Moon, that no believable explanation has been offered regarding the vast number of sightings by people of all ages and professions. There are 1 million in the USA alone, where military personnel are trained to debunk sightings, and NASA curiously publishes photographs showing UFOs, such as this one. Whilst it makes little sense for armament manufacturers to create hundreds of thousands of nuclear bombs, enough to extinguish all life on this planet many, many times, there is likely to be more to this puzzle. And it may be one of the many vitally important realities which are kept secret by the powerful few. These are official NASA photographs. Exactly what is pictured remains uncertain. It is, however, worth mentioning a report in the highly regarded Australian magazine Nexus that a Russian spacecraft photographing Mars ceased transmission in the presence of a huge UFO. Perhaps the Americans and Russians are preparing their Star Wars capabilities for an invader from another planet. Or perhaps we are being used as a manufacturing base for deadly toys to be delivered to some distant intergalactic war game. Every ancient civilization has stories of space travellers in fiery chariots from the sky. These pictures show the legend of Marduk. Legends of Marduk and other space gods from the past usually include predictions that they will return. We are still left to guess whether the UFOs seen so often are evidence of visitors from outer space or examples of advanced anti-gravity craft made secretly on Earth in great numbers. Whatever the truth of these things is, it may be time to find a new system of planetary management, where love is the currency and money and time are only rated brief mentions in history books.